I had always dreamed of escaping the city grind, the endless traffic, the screaming sirens at 3 a.m., the neighbors who argued through paper-thin walls. It had worn me down to a threat. My name is Adam Zoe, 35 years old, a graphic designer who spent his days staring at screens in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, churning out logos for startups that would probably fold in 6 months. Freelance life sounded glamorous until you realized it was just isolation with irregular paychecks. So when the lawyer's email arrived one rainy Tuesday in October, informing me that my estranged great-uncle Harold had passed away and left me his cabin in the woods of upstate New York, it felt like the universe finally throwing me a lifeline. Uncle Harold and I hadn't spoken in over 20 years. He was the black sheep of the family. Reclusive, odd, the kind of relative parents whispered about at holidays. "Don't bother Harold," my mom would say whenever I asked why we never visited. "He likes his privacy." I barely remembered him, a tall, gaunt man with piercing gray eyes who showed up to my 10th birthday with a hand-carved wooden puzzle box and then vanished again for a decade. When he died at 82, apparently of natural causes, in that very cabin, the will was straightforward. Everything to me, his only living blood relative willing to claim it. No contest from distant cousins. They all lived in Florida and wanted nothing to do with that creepy old place. I drove up the following weekend to see it for the first time as an adult. The cabin sat at the end of a winding dirt road, 2 hours north of Albany, surrounded by dense pines that blocked out most of the sky. It was bigger than I expected. 2 stories, wraparound porch, stone chimney blackened from decades of fires. Inside smelled of cedar and dust. The furniture was antique but sturdy. A leather armchair by the fireplace, a heavy oak dining table, bookshelves crammed with yellowed paperbacks and nature guides. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms. The attic had been converted into a 4th with slanted ceilings and a single round window overlooking the forest. In the basement, I found boxes of old tools, fishing gear, and stacks of photo albums I didn't have the heart to open yet. The place needed work, leaky roof patches, outdated wiring, plumbing that groaned like an old man getting out of bed, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of possibility. I could fix it up, maybe live here part-time, escape the noise of the city. But renovations cost money I didn't have. That's when the idea hit. Airbnb. Remote, peaceful, perfect for writers or couples wanting a digital detox. I spent the next month cleaning, painting, installing Wi-Fi, spotty but functional, and setting up a basic security system. 4 cameras covering the entrances, living room, kitchen, and hallway. Nothing fancy, just peace of mind. I took photos in golden afternoon light, wrote a listing titled "Cozy Woodland Retreat, Secluded Cabin Amidst Towering Pines," and hit publish. Bookings trickled in slowly at first. Weekend getaways for hikers, a photographer doing an autumn foliage shoot. The reviews were glowing, exactly as described, so quiet you can hear your thoughts. Adam was a responsive host. The extra income let me replace the roof and upgrade the hot water heater. By early December, I was comfortable enough to spend longer stretches there myself, working remotely from the dining table with a view of snow-dusted trees. Then came the booking from Elena. Her message arrived on a Monday evening. "Hi, Adam. I'm looking for a quiet week away to focus on some writing. Your cabin looks perfect. Available December 12th through 19th? Thank you, Elena." Her profile photo was blurry, a woman with dark hair, mid-40s maybe, wearing sunglasses. No reviews yet, she had just created the account. I hesitated for a moment. New guests always carried a slight risk, but the dates were open and she had paid in full up front. I accepted. The forecast called for a major storm that Friday, the day she was due to arrive. I drove up early to stock the fridge. Fresh bread, eggs, milk, coffee, some apples in a bowl on the counter. I left a welcome note on the table. "Make yourself at home. Firewood on the porch, Wi-Fi password on the fridge. Call or message if you need anything. Adam." I planned to stay the first night myself in the attic bedroom, just to make sure everything went smoothly. After that, I'd head back to the city and let her have the place to herself. By late afternoon, the sky had turned bruise purple. Snow mixed with sleet pelted the windows as I built a fire in the fireplace. The wind howled through the trees, making the old cabin creak and groan like it was alive. I tried to work, but the storm distracted me. Around 8 p.m., the power flickered once, twice, then held. I checked the cameras on my phone, everything quiet. Elena was due by 7, but the roads must be bad. I texted through the Airbnb app, "Storm's pretty intense, drive safe, no rush." No reply. At 10:15 p.m., headlights finally cut through the darkness, swaying as the car navigated the muddy driveway. I pulled on my boots and coat, stepped onto the porch as sleet stung my face. A battered gray sedan rolled to a stop. The driver's door opened, and a woman emerged, pulling a hood up against the weather. She grabbed a small black duffel bag from the back seat. No suitcase, no laptop bag, just that one bag. "Elena?" I called over the wind. "Yes, sorry I'm so late," she shouted back. Her voice was calm, almost melodic, despite the chaos around us. She hurried up the steps, water dripping from her coat. Up close, she was striking in an understated way. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin, dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Late 40s, maybe, early 50s. She offered a gloved hand. "Thank you for waiting." "No problem. Let's get you inside." I held the door as she stepped in, stomping snow off her boots. She paused in the entryway, gazing slowly around. The fireplace crackling, the warm glow of lamps, the scent of pine from the wood I'd just added. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Exactly what I needed." I gave her the quick tour. Kitchen to the left, living room with the fireplace straight ahead, bathroom down the hall, her bedroom upstairs, the largest one, with the queen bed and forest view. I pointed out the thermostat, the extra blankets in the closet, a stack of firewood. "You're staying tonight?" she asked when I mentioned the attic. "Just the first night, to make sure everything's working with the storm. I'll be out of your hair tomorrow morning." She nodded. "That's kind of you." We stood awkwardly for a moment. The storm raged outside, rattling the windows. "Well," I said, "help yourself to anything in the kitchen. I'll be upstairs if you need me." "Thank you, Adam." I retreated to the attic, leaving her by the fire. My room was cozy, slanted ceiling, a small desk by the round window, a twin bed under the eaves. I could hear the faint creak of floorboards as she moved around downstairs. I opened my laptop, tried to answer some client emails, but the spotty signal kept dropping. Eventually, I gave up, changed into sweats, and crawled under the quilts. Sleep didn't come easily. The wind screamed through the trees like something in pain. The cabin shifted and groaned. Around 1 a.m., I thought I heard the front door open and close. Maybe she stepped out for air, but no footsteps on the porch. Then, faint but unmistakable, the soft pad of feet on the stairs. Slow, deliberate. I froze, listening. They reached the landing, paused, then moved across the hallway toward her room. The door clicked shut. Probably just getting settled. I rolled over, pulled the blanket higher. At 2:27 a.m., I checked my phone. I woke again, this time to silence. The storm had quieted to a steady patter of sleet, but something felt off. A creak from below, then another. Footsteps again, but lighter, almost hesitant. Down the stairs this time. I lay still, heart thudding. Maybe she couldn't sleep either. Insomnia in a new place was normal. I heard a faint clink of a glass in the kitchen, water running. Then nothing. Eventually, I drifted off. Morning brought a world transformed. Heavy snow blanketed everything. Trees bowed under the weight, the driveway invisible. Power was still on, thankfully. I came downstairs around 8 a.m. to find the kitchen subtly disturbed. The loaf of bread on the counter had a jagged chunk torn from it, crumbs scattered, a glass in the sink with milk residue. The cabinet above the fridge stood slightly ajar. I frowned. Had I left it like that? I tidied up, started coffee. Elena appeared 20 minutes later, hair damp from a shower, wearing a black sweater and jeans. She looked rested, almost serene. "Good morning," I said, pouring her a mug. "Sleep okay?" "Like the dead," she replied with a small smile. "The quiet here is absolute." We chatted over coffee. She said she was writing a memoir about loss. Her husband had passed a few years ago, and she needed distance from reminders. Her answers were polite but vague. Whenever I asked specifics, she deflected gently. Her gaze kept drifting to the walls, where old family photos hung in uneven frames. Black and white portraits, mostly. My great-grandparents on their wedding day. Uncle Harold as a young man with a rifle during hunting season. Group shots of relatives I didn't recognize posing stiffly in front of the cabin. "That one's interesting," she said suddenly, nodding at a large sepia photo above the fireplace. It showed a family of 7, parents, 5 children, standing on the porch, all in 1930s clothing, faces solemn. "My great-grandparents," I explained, "and their kids. This was their place originally." She studied it for a long moment. "They look patient." I laughed awkwardly. Old photos always look serious. No smiling allowed back then. She didn't laugh, just sipped her coffee. I spent the morning shoveling a path to my car while she sat by the window with a notebook, writing in long, flowing strokes. The snow was too deep to leave. The plow wouldn't reach this far for days, so I texted clients I'd be offline longer than planned. Around noon, I made grilled cheese sandwiches. We ate in silence mostly, the only sound the crackle of the fire. As the afternoon wore on, the odd little things began to accumulate. The hallway light flickered when no one was near the switch. I found the basement door ajar, though I hadn't gone down there. An apple from the bowl on the counter was missing its core, left neatly on the cutting board like someone had eaten around it. I chalked it up to my own forgetfulness. Stress, maybe. New environment. That evening, Elena excused herself early. "Jet lag from life," she joked softly. I stayed up reviewing the security camera footage on my laptop, habit from city living. The living room cam showed her at 3:12 a.m., standing in front of the photo wall in her nightgown, head tilted as if listening. She reached out, fingers tracing the glass over the faces in that large family portrait. Her lips moved, whispering something too quiet for the mic to catch. Then she turned, walked back upstairs. Nothing sinister, just strange. I told myself writers were eccentric. She needed space for her memoir. I went to bed early, determined to leave first thing if the roads cleared. But the snow kept falling. The snow kept falling for 3 more days straight, turning the world outside into an endless white void. The county plow finally cleared the main road on the 4th morning, but our driveway remained buried under drifts taller than me. Cell service flickered in and out. The Wi-Fi held just long enough for me to send apologetic messages to clients and check the forecast. Another storm was coming. I was stuck here with Elena for at least another week. At first, I tried to treat it like an unplanned vacation. I worked at the dining table when the internet cooperated, chopped firewood when it didn't, cooked simple meals, pasta, chili from cans, eggs scrambled with whatever vegetables were left. Elena kept to herself mostly, writing in her notebook by the fireplace or staring out the windows at the falling snow. She ate what I offered with quiet thanks, but never much. Her presence was polite, unobtrusive, yet the cabin felt smaller with her in it. The air carried a faint tension I couldn't name. The little disturbances continued, growing harder to dismiss. On the 3rd night of the extended stay, I woke to the sound of the front door opening. Not the wind. This was the deliberate click of the latch, the soft creak of hinges. I sat up in the attic bed, heart racing. Footsteps crunched on the porch, slow and measured. I grabbed my phone, opened the security app. The front camera showed Elena standing outside in the snow, wearing nothing but her sweater and jeans. No coat, no boots. Snowflakes melted in her dark hair as she stared into the forest. She stood there for nearly 10 minutes, unmoving, as if waiting for someone. Then she turned, walked back inside, and closed the door gently. The footage showed her pausing in the entryway, looking directly up at the camera with an expression I couldn't read, almost like she knew I was watching. The next morning, I found wet footprints leading from the door to the stairs, already half melted into the rug. When I asked if she'd gone out for air, she tilted her head slightly. "Must have been sleepwalking," she said. "I do that sometimes when I'm stressed." Her tone was light, but her eyes held mine a second too long. Food kept disappearing in odd ways. Half a jar of peanut butter emptied overnight, lid replaced neatly, a block of cheese with perfect semicircular bites taken out of, as though someone had scooped it with a spoon. I started keeping a mental inventory, then a written one on a notepad by the fridge. Elena noticed. "You're very organized," she commented one afternoon, watching me cross off 2 apples to 0 apples. I laughed it off, but the truth was I no longer trusted my own memory. The lights began flickering more often, especially in the evenings. I checked the breaker box twice, nothing tripped, replaced bulbs that were barely a month old. The power surges coincided with cold spots in the house, sudden drops in temperature that made my breath visible in the hallway, even with the fireplace roaring. Elena never seemed to notice the cold. She sat in her sweater, writing, while I piled on extra layers. One afternoon, desperate for distraction, I decided to tackle the basement boxes I'd been avoiding. The stairs creaked under my weight as I carried a flashlight and a thermos of coffee down. The air down there was damp and earthy, laced with the faint metallic tang of old pipes. I opened the first box, fishing lures, rusted tackle, my uncle's old hunting licenses. The second held photo albums, thick with dust. I flipped through one, coughing as particles danced in the flashlight beam. The photos were mostly from the 1970s and 80s. Uncle Harold, younger, with hair, standing beside men in camouflage holding deer carcasses. Family gatherings on the porch, Christmas lights strung along the railing, kids in ugly sweaters, a woman who must have been his sister, my grandmother, smiling wide. Then deeper in the album, the tone shifted. Newspaper clippings tucked between pages. The first headline, "Tragic Murder-Suicide Claims Family of 5 in Remote Cabin, 1987. My stomach dropped. The article described a horrific scene. Parents and 3 children found dead in their beds, throats cut, the father hanging from the attic rafters. The sole survivor, a teenage daughter named Clara, had been away at a friend's house. Police ruled it a murder-suicide, the father driven mad by isolation and debt. But Clara insisted otherwise in later interviews, clipped further along. Something made him do it. There was a woman living in the woods. She wanted us gone. I stared at the photo longer than I should have. The woman's face was younger, gaunt, but the bone structure, the sharp cheekbones, the deep-set eyes, was eerily familiar. Footsteps overhead made me jump, Elena moving across the living room floor. I closed the album quickly, heart hammering, and shoved it back into the box. I climbed the stairs, trying to act normal. That evening, the storm returned with a vengeance. Wind screamed through the trees, snow lashing the windows like thrown gravel. Power flickered, died for 30 seconds, came back dimmer. I built up the fire while Elena sat in the leather armchair, notebook closed on her lap for once. She was staring at the large family portrait above the mantel, the one in the 1930s she'd commented about before. "Do you ever feel them watching?" she asked suddenly. I paused, poker in hand. "Who?" "The people in the pictures. Your family." I forced a chuckle. "They're just old photos." She didn't laugh, just sipped a coffee. The lights flickered again. In that brief stutter, I swear the faces in the portrait shifted, eyes following me. When the lights steadied, everything looked normal. I told myself it was exhaustion. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled like voices arguing. Around 2 a.m., I heard murmuring, soft, rhythmic, coming from Elena's room. I crept to the attic door, cracked it open. The hallway was dark, but a sliver of light showed under her door. The murmuring continued,
Not English, or not clearly. A low chant, almost a lullaby. Then silence. I went back to bed, but dreams plagued me. Fragments of the clippings, blood on snow, faces pressing against windows from outside. Morning brought no relief. The power was out completely now. The generator in the shed kicked on with a reluctant cough, giving us basic lights and heat. I shoveled a path to the woodpile while Elena watched from the window, unmoving. When I came back in, cheeks stinging from cold, I found something new on the dining table, a single sheet of paper torn from her notebook. In careful handwriting, "Waiting for the others to leave. The house is almost ready. Soon we'll all be together again." My blood turned to ice. I confronted her in the living room. "Elena, what is this?" She looked up from the fireplace, expression calm. "A line from my memoir, drafting dialogue. This was on the table. It feels personal." She tilted her head. "Everything we write is personal, Adam." I didn't push further, but I started locking my attic door at night, a flimsy slide bolt, but better than nothing. I moved the kitchen knives to a high shelf. I checked the camera footage obsessively. It showed her wandering the house at odd hours, standing in front of mirrors, touching the walls as if feeling for something beneath the wood. On the 6th day, or was it the 7th, time blurred. The generator sputtered and died. No fuel left. I'd miscalculated how much we'd need. The house grew cold fast. We relied on the fireplace entirely. I burned furniture from the basement, an old chair, broken shelves to keep the flames going. Elena helped stack wood without complaint, her hands surprisingly strong. That afternoon, I noticed changes in the photos. At first subtle, a smudge on the glass that looked like a fingerprint, then more obvious. In the large portrait, the youngest child, a girl of maybe 8, now had an extra figure beside her, a shadowy outline, indistinct but human-shaped. I blinked hard, cleaned the glass. The shadow remained. I took a photo with my phone to compare. In my picture, the shadow was clearer, a woman standing just behind the family, face obscured. I showed Elena, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you see this? Something's wrong with the picture." She studied it, then the original. "Old photos degrade strangely sometimes. Light damage." But her hand trembled slightly as she handed my phone back. That night, the temperature plummeted. We sat by the fire in silence, wrapped in blankets. The wind outside had died, leaving an unnatural quiet. Then the whispering started, not from Elena, but from the walls themselves. Faint at first, like wind in the chimney. Then words, overlapping voices. "Come home. Waiting so long. Family." I looked at Elena. She was staring into the flames, her lips moving silently. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. She turned slowly. In the firelight, her face looked different, older yet familiar, like the woman in the clipping. "They're happy you're here. They've missed you." I stood, backing towards the stairs. "Who?" She rose too, blanket falling away. "The others. Clara tried to keep them apart, but I fixed it. One by one, I brought them back." My mind raced. The survivor Clara? My grandmother's sister? She'd changed her name, moved away, cut ties. Uncle Harold had stayed, guarding the place, or hiding from it. Elena, no, Margaret, stepped closer. "You're the last, Adam. The bloodline ends with you joining us." The fire flared unnaturally high. Shadows detached from the walls, stretching, taking form. Pale figures in outdated clothes. The family from the portraits, from the clippings. Faces I recognize now from the albums. Eyes hollow, mouths open in silent welcome. I bolted for the door, but the knob wouldn't turn, frozen or locked from inside. Windows were iced shut. The figures closed in, cold hands reaching. Margaret's voice behind me, gentle. "Don't fight it. We've waited decades for the family to be whole." The last thing I remember clearly was the large portrait above the mantel. Every figure was there now. Parents, children, Uncle Harold, even faces from more recent photos. And in the center, newly appeared, was me, standing among them, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream that never came. They say the plow finally reached the cabin in early January. Search teams found the place empty, fire long cold, no sign of the owner or his guest. The listing was taken down. Locals avoid the road now, but sometimes on stormy nights, headlights appear at the end of the drive, new guests arriving late, drawn by an old Airbnb ad that somehow never fully disappeared. And in the family portrait above the mantel, one more figure has joined the others, a man in modern clothes, looking out with eyes that finally understand. He was never the host. He was always the last guest.